D&D is full of curses. We see them on items, places, playable species. We even love throwing them in backstories. But we rarely ever talk about cursed monsters other than werewolves. So for Monster Week, the annual creator community event, let's dive into a fey creature and create some cursed dryad concepts. And thank you to my Patreons for supporting this video. There are a bunch of storylines that you can create with curses, but sometimes just starting with what is already available and written can be a good way to generate ideas. So let's take a look. However, as far as I know, D&D doesn't have a ton of curses that aren't just attached to items. But there are some to get inspiration from, or outright use. One of these stands out to me so much on being immediately great and fitting into that magical woodland creature, the Dryad. Of course, it's a weretree. I'm kidding. It's not a weretree. No weretrees in here. Unless? It's the rusting curse. This is a magical disease that transforms plants into metal, but creatures into constructs known as the rusted. These creatures are driven to destroy nature and spread the curse that created them. This curse fits in a way your players won't see coming, because dryads are normally bound to their spirit tree and have the duty of protecting their forest and the nature around them. However, a rusted dryad would start doing the opposite, becoming hostile to flora and fauna they once swore to protect. This type of quest would pair really well for anyone playing a druid or a ranger, or just placed near or inside a druid or elf's grove. Not only is it easy to set up story-wise, but both the rusted creature and the dryad comes in a variety of playstyles and CRs, allowing you to mix and match to Frankenstein yourself up a boss between the stat blocks, or slowly switching from one to the other as the transformation takes place. If you have a hard time coming up with ideas for a session, or just need a little inspiration, check out my Patreon where I'm giving away free Dryad themed quest cards, link in description. Way back in the 2nd edition, there was a curse called the Crimson Death. This curse may be old, and the stat block that originally came with it may basically be useless at 5e. But the story that goes along with it works great. When the disease took its deathly grips on a person, it would slowly and painfully transform them. They'd watch as blood pooled under them, bleeding out till there wasn't a drop left. After death came, they would rise once again, now looking for victims to help replace the blood they had lost. This is so cool for just about any monster, but a dryad really interests me with this, because are they filling their tree with blood, or themselves? If they're filling them, the bodies could be scattered, drawing less attention to them. However, on the other hand, something like a willow tree would be an excellent hiding place for bodies and a grisly sight to shock your players. A D&D party also isn't likely to suspect a dryad immediately upon bodies just hanging from a tree, unless they catch the dryad there. However, they are fairly likely to take interest in a murder mystery, meaning this could do well as a short quest or a longer one. The final boss fight could even be interesting if the power of the dryad increased the more blood it was able to get, creating the perfect additional objective during the boss fight of saving the sacrifices. Where D&D does have some curses, they might not always fit our needs, so we have to create our own. But to create our own, we need to understand something fundamentally about a curse. A curse isn't just a stat block, it's not just an objective slap onto the front of something for variety, although it does help with variety. A curse is ultimately a story. All curses are a metamorphosis story, but your players don't always see the metamorphosis part, meaning there is a curse story and then your player's story. The curse's story should synergize or have a twist, somehow from what a monster would normally be perceived like. Most players will perceive dryads, for the most part, to be generally good creatures, even if that's not what all dryad stat blocks say, meaning we want to challenge this perception most of the time. These dryads are not all as innocent as you may think once they're cursed. Then we get to the player's story. An easy one that synergizes with expectations and the player's wishes for control is curse prevention. This is super straightforward, just give your players a sense of urgency and a threat of what will happen if it isn't stopped. Imagine this. A magical blight is rushing through the forest. Nothing but rot and ruin is left in its wake. And it's closing in on the last grove of the Dryads, the final protectors of the woods we have left. The last time this poison came, it twisted the Dryads it hit into venomous monstrosities, a small army that tore through this town. I still hear the echoes screaming in my head at night as I lay in bed. Stat block-wise, this can simply turn a friendly Dryad into a dead bark Dryad if it isn't stopped. Another classic for D&D is Save the Day, a mission of finding a way to reverse the curse. In this scenario, we need to lead the players to a way to reverse it, as well as a promise of the outcome being better than the current situation. Taking special care in showing that the current situation is awful, evil, gross, or getting worse. For example, possibly some myconoids have inhabited a cave under the roots of the Dryad's tree. This has corrupted the Dryad into fungus. This fungus is spreading through the forest slowly and turning it into a toxic jungle. The air so dense with spores it's hard to even breathe in. If your players like NPCs and helping them out, this forest could have a trade route that is going to be rendered impossible to use, cutting off the town from new resources, slowly starving them out. One of the most known curse stories across all time is something gets turned into something it wasn't originally. Like in the classic Brothers Grimm tale, The Frog Prince, there may be an action that can uncurse the transformation, or an enemy slain, or a deal made to uncurse the creature. This one goes surprisingly amazing with Dryads. One often unknown fact about the Dryad is they can't move more than a couple hundred feet away from their bound tree, meaning that if anyone gets cursed into one of them, they cannot go home to their family. The stakes on this can be amplified by turning this into a hag's curse. Much like how you have to fight or sneak your way through Auntie Ethel's lair past innocent people who were tricked that you can free, the hag can be using its victims as literally army that the players have to fight through or sneak through to get to the hag to undo the curse. I think this image of the hag's lair is particularly haunting if you use the aesthetics of Dark Souls 3 of people turning into trees. And if you just want an epic fight for your players to partake in, simply just use the Metamorphosis story. Once again, much like Dark Souls, make your boss have phases, getting stronger and more twisted by the curse in each phase. If you've stuck around to this point, let me know what the last curse you saw in D&D was, and don't forget to go check out those free quest cards over on my Patreon. Have a fantastic day.